5:32. I'll call to order the Woodland Hills Metropolitan District regular board meeting for Thursday, October 26, 2023 at 5:32 p.m. Item 2, roll call.
John Martin, present.
Stacy Popovich, present.
Troy Stinson, present.
Sherry Reading, present.
My phone, and Kelsey is out of country, and I will motion we excuse her.
Second.
Any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, item 3, director disclosures. Are there any?
No conflicts.
All right, no conflicts. Item 4 will be approval or disapproval of this agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
Any other discussion on it? None heard. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Motion carries. And item 5, president's welcome. Welcome, everybody. There's no public here. I didn't catch your name.
Harold Smith.
Harold. Harold Smith from Ruftellus, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. We're gonna get a presentation tonight. I like it. I like it. Is it in color?
There are colors,
All right.
yes.
Perfect. Just messing with Carter.
So is this. Everything here is all colored.
It is colored.
Is it way more expensive to do color than black and white? Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't we do black and white then?
Because
Don't even. Don't even.
With that being said, thank you all for being here tonight, and for those at home that are gonna watch this sometime. How fast are we getting these on there after these are?
Nowadays fast.
Okay. All right, would someone like to lead us in pledge allegiance?
Pledge
Pledge
allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's like an echo. I like it.
Just throw me off.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Kindergarten cadence was ruined, huh? Wow. You were just on fire today.
All right, item 6 will be public comment regarding current board business not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? See anybody? All right.
Looks like we have a lot of changes, huh?
All right.
Yes, a couple.
All right, item 7, approval or disapproval of prior meeting minutes. Are those all the changes that we saw on there?
So what you have in your packet is the changes from general counsel. So if there's any additional change, do that. But I didn't want to go another month of not giving the board financials.
Sure.
So you still have the full roll-up. It's what will be impacted necessarily would be the undefined could skew a line item one way or the other. So there will be some modifications as we go on throughout the year, but overall, both revenue and expenses are listed here.
And I did notice that there are several items where we have already hit 100% on budget for the year.
That is correct.
So things like engineering and things like that, those are items that anything else would just roll over into the new year? Or are we paid out for the year already?
We can look at doing a budget amendment for next month to increase those expense lines. It's something we had talked about a couple months ago.
Okay.
We knew we were gonna hit that for legal fees. So I expect that John and I will work on a budget amendment for next month just to clarify the expenses. Overall though, you're not gonna be over budget on total expenses. You may be over budget for that line, but you won't be over budget for total expenses.
So why would we do an amendment?
Well, that's where I was actually gonna go with that. I was gonna ask you, Stacy, do you want to do it? even though it's not gonna be an overall expense,
If the,
you don't have to.
if the
By
three
statute, you don't have to.
enterprises,
Yeah,
if the three enterprises didn't go over their operating budget,
right. So by statute, you don't have to.
correct?
But if you want to make the budget correct in the terms of what we actually are spending, you can make that amendment. I would prefer not to, because I would rather see the actuals versus what the budget, so you can see that variance. From a future planning perspective, we can see that change or that variation in the data.
Correct.
So I would prefer not to, especially since overall expenses are coming in.
Who's boss?
I don't wanna do an amendment.
Well, I wouldn't amend it either. I think it's a good measuring stick for what we need to allocate more to next year.
Correct.
Yes. Especially after executive session.
Just wanted to make sure that we were perfectly aware that some of these are over quite a bit.
Legal fees is way over.
So
Way over,
that's
but we knew, we didn't know, obviously, going into the year, but as the year progressed, because of just the legal issues that we ran into, there was just no way around it.
Well, I know we drew it back last year,
We did.
and now we're like back.
We're worse off, to be honest,
That's
right, to
what
be
we were.
transparent, worse off, but hindsight is always 20/20, but no one had a crystal ball that would have projected that
Right.
we would have had as many legal fees as we did.
Okay.
Sherry, did you have any questions on the financials?
No, I did not.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the financials.
No second.
All right, got a motion by Stacy and a second by John. Any other discussion on the financials? All right, all in favor for approval of financials?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, item 9, attorney's report.
So not a ton to update on this report. It's going to look fairly similar to last month. A lot of items are ongoing. The big ones are the Circle K inclusion. I went back and reviewed our February board meeting where the hearing was held and the inclusion was approved. That resolution was approved subject to the service agreement being approved. So since the service agreement just got signed about a week and a half ago, we have sent out the resolution from the February meeting for final signatures. Once we have those back, this will be filed with the court and we'll have the first court approval in a couple days.
And that was which one?
That was for the Circle K.
Okay.
And what service agreement?
So with Circle K, there was this was the service agreement we reviewed 2 board meetings ago and approved last month. Otherwise, basically, you're gonna see a lot more come at the November meeting. We have posted the notice of intent to fix fees, to set the fee rates for next year. We will also have the budget hearing in November as well, and we will not have an amendment to the budget based on the decision a few minutes ago. So a lot of that will be upcoming. Any questions I can answer?
We'll also have the collections resolution.
Oh, yes, we'll also be having our, Yeah.
We also may have some more resolutions related to those inclusions that we were talking about.
Yep.
That need to be finalized from 2020.
Yeah, so we'll discuss some of this in the executive session, and then the board can take direction outside of the, or can give direction outside of the executive
I've seen
session.
you found one.
Yeah, but we'll also be having a collection resolution, just to kind of iron out the collection process more than anything else.
Perfect. Any questions for, at least in regards to the attorney's report? All right, with that being said, we'll go to item 10, the rate study review by Rotellus Financial Consultants. I will turn it over to you, sir.
All right.
Sherry, I'm sad you're missing this in person, it's really cool.
It's actually how I think Carter should be presenting these. all
I
this
knew that was gonna happen. I knew that was gonna happen.
I think it would make it much better to have a presentation to the board.
I don't know why we don't put that up on.
And then it would
on the
always be in
screen.
color.
You wouldn't have to.
If I don't have to print those, I will gladly do a presentation every board meeting.
No,
You know
well,
how
as
much
long as I
time it
have an
takes?
Do you have one
email,
of those pointer things?
yeah, you should get one of those.
Do you know if you have to do anything to? Are you trying to computer?
Yeah,
By HDMI?
yeah, it's already hooked up. We just.
Did you go to HDMI on your projector?
That's what I'm asking.
Do you have the remote?
Really bad.
He's like,
It was in
"Okay,
the
just
bag.
push
I
all
know
the
this
buttons."
is a guy that wants all new IT stuff.
Oh, be
Can't
quiet.
function the stuff he's got.
We don't ever get the sound unless we get our water setting. Which, are we getting one? Are we getting a water presentation soon?
We haven't had one in like 3 years.
Yeah, we
From
haven't
the
had-
engineers?
Yeah.
Yeah,
When do you want it?
what's that cost?
Password is right there.
I would
I can
say-
find out.
I would say let's throw it in at the start of the new year, once we're done with the
The other
acquisition and all
Yeah.
that. And then we have let's just touch on it briefly in executive.
Okay.
When we're talking about what
Yeah.
we have to talk about with
Yes.
detail of
Okay.
a meeting where we can get them in here to present it.
That makes
updated.
sense.
Yeah, we can plug it, I do have an HDMI, we can just plug it straight in if we want. So should I confuse? Good job, Carter.
It's not mine. Mine Parks and Rec.
Oh, yeah.
I see how this, you're on numbers now.
Listen, I cannot get all the heat, okay? We have to share the wealth.
I just remember how to do that before.
That's who we're missing. I knew we were missing somebody while he's not here.
It's on vacation.
I know, he reminded me like 8 times.
I'm out of state next board meeting.
Get it back on, so that brings up that,
Okay.
the
Right.
That's nice.
It got moved to November 16th because of Thanksgiving, and I fly that day.
You do what?
I fly November 16th.
Where are you flying to?
New York.
On purpose?
That's where I'm from, so yeah, it's on purpose. It's the only reason you go.
Sure, whose memory have you December meeting?
We're in New York.
Normally not.
Syracuse.
Normally we don't.
I was curious because a lot of our clients have December meetings and none came over before, so I was curious if we would normally have.
So normally we don't, unless we have something like emergent or spring.
I lived in-
Your meeting, right? November
You wanna try
16th,
my
all
laptop?
about you?
Oh, no.
If we're like.
That's why we have
This
Carter.
comes out this year.
I have the original deck.
Well,
Most
that's
of the
usually-
meetings are 5-minute. We're gonna get motion or vote on something real quick, so we can get it this year. And then, adjourn it. If we have to do something like that, we'll do it by Zoom, we won't do it in person this year. I noticed that a lot of, boards and stuff are still doing Zoom meetings.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of.
Pretty abundant.
Yeah.
So Troy, what did you text me about?
Actually, you might not want to. Let's try Nordcast. So go Windows K.
In the, out here?
Yeah, I
See
was
if
just
it'll pick it
curious.
up.
I think, no news.
Should be evening.
No news?
Yeah. Then we can do it just wirelessly.
What ended up happening to the, hopefully, that, was it Eagle View? Is that the name of the district that was being proposed?
It's moving forward.
Oh, did it got approved?
I don't know that it got approved. I just read it.
There we go.
There we go.
I was gonna take a look at it, we're trying to keep track of the service plans in this.
Yeah, it did just pass. It passed 4-1 with, I believe, Gonzalez voted against it.
Okay.
You're talking about Eagle View, the one west of Paintbrush.
Yes.
Yeah, it just passed it. It was either yesterday's meeting, or was it was Tuesday's meeting that passed.
Good
enough for government.
And it was 4-1, Gonzalez voted against it.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines, Corey.
For service plan, it's something to be doing, and then you said service plan, I'm trying to, it's just a feel of when the approval may be.
All right, we're ready to go. Thanks, Carter.
Yep.
So I'm Harold Smith with Raftelis Financial Consultants. We've been working with Carter and his team for a while now to do water, sewer, parks and rec, financial planning, cost of service rate study. And I'm here tonight to tell you what we've come up with. So first of all, we're just going to talk about what a rate study is. Then we're going to get into the financial plans for water, sewer, parks and rec. That feeds into a cost of service analysis, which then goes to rate design. And then lastly, we're going to talk about your tap fees and system development fees. And feel free to interrupt me with any questions you have along the way. So, what is a rate study? Well, basically a rate study is determining what your financial needs are, both currently and into the future. We base that on budget documents, capital improvement plans, information about expected growth in the area, a variety of different things, both financial and customer data. And we use that, build in some assumptions with respect to how quickly costs are going to increase. A lot of times those are just inflationary assumptions. Other times, the Carter will say, oh, we know we have to hire 2 new people in fiscal year 2027, so we need to build in salaries and wages for those people. So there's some discrete changes, but a lot of it is just driven by, costs go up as time goes by. And then the next step in that is a cost of service analysis. And what that does is it allows us to determine who is causing us to incur costs in the way in which we're incurring them. Customers demand water, and we have to get that water out of the ground. We have to treat that water. We then have to deliver it to the customers. All those things cost money, not only in the operating costs, paying the people, paying for electricity and those sorts of things, but you've invested a lot of money in infrastructure that is needed to provide those services. So we've got both your operating and capital costs that go into that. And then you get revenues in through your water rates and sewer rates and your parks and recs fees. So that's the revenue side coming in. And then the cost of service allows us to identify which customer classes are causing us to incur costs in certain ways. And then the last step in that is the rate design, where we really get down and determine the exact mechanisms we're going to use to recover that revenue. And it's really a matter of looking at fixed charges versus variable charges. So you have a monthly base charge, and then you have volumetric charges on the water side that are based on how much water you actually use. And so we want to design those rates in a way that ensures you have a steady stream of fixed revenue, because most of your costs are really fixed. Electricity, chemicals, pretty much the only two that really vary based on how much water you're pulling out of the ground and delivering to people. Other stuff, all your debt service on debt you've issued to fund projects. Salaries and wages is, you can't hire somebody 1 week and then get rid of them the next week and then hire them back the next week when you need that. So most of them are fixed, so we want to make sure we have a good fixed revenue stream, but we also want to make people pay for the service they're using. And y'all have an inclining block rate structure, which is designed to promote conservation or wise water use, such that if you're using water wisely, you're going to pay a lower cost per unit than those people that are, irrigating willy-nilly or just doing, not using your water in a wise way. And then the other component of that is your system development fees, which are fees you assess to new development to pay for the cost that you incur to provide the capacity to serve them. Okay, so a couple of things to note here is that basically the revenues that come into the district, they're all commingled in one fund, but for the purposes of this study, we've split them out into water and sewer and parks and rec, so that we can handle each one individually and look at financial metrics associated with each one. And then the last rate study was done in 2016, so it's been a while. Things have changed since then, and so we wanted to make sure that we were up to date with what's going on in the district. So now we'll talk about your financial plans. So basically what we're trying to do here is match your revenues with your expenditures. So you've got a variety of different revenues that are coming in. You've got your revenues from rates, you've got loan proceeds. When you issue debt, you get a chunk of money that comes in. You've got your connection fees, which are your tap fees and system development fees, and then water resource fees. And you've got some other revenue, interest income, penalties, that sort of thing, but they're pretty minor. Those are your major ones. Then on the expenditure side, you've got your operating expenses, salaries, wages, electricity, materials, all those things. Then you've got capital costs. You've got both capital costs related to building new infrastructure to serve new customers, growth-related capital. And then you have your R&R capital, which is taking care of the assets you already have in place. You might need to upgrade those assets to meet regulatory requirements. You might just need to replace them because they've worn out. But there's capital costs that you're incurring every year. And then you have your debt service, which is paying back the loans you've taken out to fund some of your projects. And then the last piece of it is taking into account your financial policies. Any debt you issue has some debt service coverage requirements, such that your revenue stream has to be higher than your expenditures, and including your debt service, just to make sure the lenders like a high debt service coverage, because that helps ensure that you're going to be able to pay back the loan. And then we have some reserve policies where we want to build cash reserves in some situations so we have cash on hand to meet known future expenditures. And we've recommended that you adjust some of your reserve policies as part of this. So that is the financial planning process. Oops, didn't realize we had those in there. But you come up with a multi-year financial plan. So on the water side, we've combined your water operating fund and your water development fund. So you get the revenues from your rates go to the water operating fund, the revenues from your system development fees go in there. We put that all together. That allows us to use that cash in a way that can help us mitigate the need for rate increases as your costs go up. And if we didn't do that, if we simply stuck with relying on the operating reserve to fund excess operating expenditures, we would have to have rate increases that were really higher than needed to be to keep that fund balance up. So we pulled those two together. So the other thing is we use a rate year is a year that you look at where you have a year's worth of costs and then a year's worth of customer demands. We picked fiscal year 2028 as your rate year. So we're calculating rates that should be in effect in 2028. We did that because primarily driven by the wastewater situation where you've got this plant that you're going to have to start building and paying for that's coming online in 28, 29. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at that year when we felt like your costs were going to be higher than they typical, so that we had rates so that we wouldn't have to get there and all of a sudden have a huge rate increase to generate the revenue you needed to meet those expenditures. So what we've done is we've calculated rates for 2028 and then developed a plan for phasing in to get to the rates you need in 2028 over the next few years. We are paying for your CIP, well, we're using cash. We're also including in our revenue requirements $500,000 a year that goes into a reserve fund, and that will be used for meeting the FAWA project, some of those costs, although we are assuming you're gonna have to issue some debt for that down the road, but that'll be a decision to be made depending on how much cash you have available, what the lending market looks like at the time, that sort of thing. So that's some of the major assumptions that we've taken into consideration. And here's where you see what the results of that financial plan are. So on this, we've got your revenue in blue, your expenses in yellow, and then the black line is your fund balance. And remember, any excess revenue at the end of the year goes into that reserve fund. Any shortfall between revenues and expenditures comes out of that fund. So it's going to fluctuate a little bit over time, but what we don't ever want to do is have that line fall into the yellow where we're, don't have the appropriate level of reserves. So we've come up with, and Carter has thoughtfully gone through, identifying how we plan to fund certain projects, what we think costs are going to do over time, and then we've developed a series of rate adjustments to make sure that we're always generating enough revenue. On the wastewater plan, once again, we're putting aside some reserve money. And in the wastewater side, we want to put away $1.2 million a year into that reserve fund, such that when we get to 27, 28, need to start paying for the treatment plant, we can use some of those reserves to offset the need to go out and issue debt. We're still assuming you're going to issue some debt, but it will be a combination. And those reserve funds are also used to pay for other capital projects in your CIP. Once again, the rate year is 2028, and we're going to issue some debt in 2027. And I think we've also assumed another 2 debt issuances, one in 27 and one in 28. Now, those can definitely change over time as project costs get more clearly defined, the schedule of when it's actually going to be done, and what the market conditions are at the time. But for now, we've made certain assumptions that go into this plan. And here's where you end up on the wastewater plan. Once again, blue is revenue, yellow is expenses, and our reserve balance. So you'll see, when we get those bond proceeds in 27, your fund balance goes up because it's all being put in the same bucket. And we'll draw that down as we spend money on the project. Okay. And then the Parks and Rec is pretty straightforward. Basically, you had a decrease in O&M expenses from last year to this year. Then to develop that plan, it was really a matter of just escalating your costs to recognize the impact of inflation. And we're putting away $150,000 each year for repair and replacement. So we're not talking about escalating revenues at this time, so we're not suggesting you raise them to generate a whole lot more revenue, but we're going to look at that over time, look at recreational program fees and your facility fees. This is something, I know Carter told us you're doing a strategic plan for Parks and Rec soon. That will probably drive some decisions about how much money you want to spend where. And once that's done, we'll come back and take another look at that and see if we need to do any other adjustments. And here's your financial plan. You see that the way we've got it set up now, you're generating a good reserve. That'll allow you to have some money on hand as that strategic plan gets implemented. my experience, strategic plans cost money to implement. So, you should have funds available to do that. So the next step in the process is the cost of service, and that's where we are trying to determine which customer classes are driving our need to spend money in certain ways. And so how do we get from the revenue requirements? In this industry, we call your costs are basically revenue requirements. We require that much, at least as much revenue as we have expenses. So revenue requirements, expenses is kind of they're synonyms. But so how do we get from the number that our financial plan spits out to the rates that we assess to each of our customers? Here's the process. We go from revenue requirement, then we allocate, what we do is we split so on the water side, we'll get all of our revenue requirements, and we'll assign them to what we call functional categories. You've got your source of supply, you've got your treatment plant, pumping, storage, transmission, distribution, and then your customer costs, which is the cost of meters, reading meters, printing bills, having somebody there to answer the phone when customers have questions. So we separate all your costs into those categories, and we work with Carter and his staff to identify which costs should go where. So now we have all of our costs in functional categories. The next step, and then on the wastewater side, it's really just treatment and collection that we have. It's not as complicated as the water side. But what we do after that is then we assign them to cost components based on customer demand characteristics. So we have 3 primary cost components that are driven by customer demand characteristics. That's your base demands, average day demands. That's your total system demand over the course of a year divided by 365. That gives you your average day demand. Then we have peak day demands, which are, as the name implies, the peak demand that's placed on the system on a given day. And then there's peak hour demands that look at, what is the maximum hour demand that's placed on the system. And your system is designed to meet all 3 of those: average day demand, peak day demand, and peak hour demand. And so, and you incur different costs to do that. And you operate your system in different ways to meet those demands. And so, once again, working with Carter and his team, we figured out which costs we need to assign to meeting average day demands, which costs are for peak day, which costs are for peak hour, and then which of those customer costs are related to meters, meter reading, billing, and that sort of thing. So we've got these operating and design criteria, and then you have these, so you've got your system designed to meet average day, peak day, and then you've got your customers placing these demands on you, their average day and your peak day, and then we distribute those costs to the customer classes. So customer classes with a higher peak day demand will get a larger share of the peak day costs. Same thing with peak hour costs. So with water, we found that the irrigation class has significantly higher peaks than your residential and commercial class. And looking at it, the data we see, a lot of accounts that have 0 demand during the winter months when you're not irrigating, obviously, and then all of a sudden, when it starts getting hot and dry, they turn on the irrigation systems and place a huge peak demand. So the difference between their average day and their peak day is pretty great because of all that time that they had 0 demand. So what we found is that your residential customer rates have, to a certain extent, been subsidizing the irrigation class. So what we're recommending is raising your irrigation rates up to a level that is consistent with cost of service, which allows us to lower the residential rates. Although we're not going to suggest that you lower your residential rates, but we're splitting that money more equitably between the customer classes now. So on the wastewater side, it's a little complicated because of your arrangements with Paintbrush Hills, Meridian Ranch, so that it's not just a function of allocating costs according to the book. We have the book, to look at, but we also have these agreements, rulings from arbitration, that sort of thing, that dictate which costs we can allocate to people. And so you'll see here that with the O&M on wastewater, everything except your collection system costs get allocated to all three of those customers. On the collections cost, neither Meridian Ranch, or we can't allocate any of those to Meridian Ranch or Paintbrush Hills. On the treatment-related regulatory, so these are capital costs that are associated with meeting more stringent regulations or making sure that you're repairing and replacing your assets, but it's not providing any new capacity. And then the everything but treatment related is really your, hey, we need more capacity, so we're going to spend some capital dollars on that. We're not allowed to allocate either any of that cost to Meridian Ranch or Paintbrush Hills. Revenue bond debt service, the arbitration agreement said, or ruling, not necessarily an agreement. I don't think any of y'all agreed with it, rightfully so, that you can't recover any revenue bond volumetric structure. And you'll see that their rates, their volumetric rates are going up significantly, and that is driven by the fact that they have very high peak demands. So they get a big share. Your system is a high peaking system overall. A lot of your costs are incurred to meet your peak day and peak hour costs. But the irrigation class is one of the primary drivers of those peaks. And so this study resulted in them getting a significant bump in the amount of revenue requirements that were allocated to them, and that's demonstrated by the significant increase in their volumetric rate. But the idea is that that will drive them to water more responsibly and manage their peaks. And if they do that successfully, then next time around they're going to get fewer costs allocated to them. And then
One thing I was to say on the irrigation
Okay.
side, the reason why this is so important is that irrigation, right, if it's a wet season, we're obviously gonna use, they're not gonna use a lot of water, right? So our revenue is gonna go down significantly. But there's still demand that they have in the systems. There's still costs, but they're not paying for any of those costs, right? Because they're not using it. Now, with a dry season, obviously they're gonna use a lot of water, so we get a lot of revenue under the current system, or current budgeted approach. This approach allows us, regardless of wet or dry, we are recovering our costs on a scale that makes sense, not only for now, but also to continue to grow and develop in the future. So really, this is a financial stability play that we are proposing to the board.
I don't think I agree with one of your statements.
Okay.
Driving up and down Eastonville or into the shopping centers down here, I don't think they care if it's a wet or dry season. I think they just turn their clocks on and
Maybe so,
they
because
just water
if you-
as they water.
and look at the tiers, right? They're only paying, regardless of the amount that they use, it's $1 per 1,000 gallons. Regardless, they could use 1,000,000 gallons. So under this new structure, in a way, they're gonna be penalized, right? Like, we're a water conservation district. You wanna use more water, then you're gonna pay a penalty for it. I mean, that is just a fact.
That would have really screwed what's their names up the street when
Courtyards.
when their water just ran by the hundreds of gallons down the drain.
So my approach, if the board does approve this, is that I will hold meetings with these commercial clients to make them aware, not only of the changes, but what they should expect to see in their bill and what changes they probably need to make in their irrigation use. Because it is gonna be significant, financial impact on those residents, which are your residents too, your constituents. So I want to be sure that they understand what they need to do with, this new rate structure.
Yeah, and I guess two things on that. Carter talked about it being a penalty. We don't like to say we're penalizing them. We're recovering the costs that we incur to meet their huge peaks. And yeah, it's a higher rate, but it's not, hey, you're bad, we're gonna slap you. It's just a function of, that's how we incur the costs, and we wanna recover them from you, because you're the ones that are making us do that.
Hey, if you're not paying attention to it being a wet season and just turning
Yeah.
your clock on and letting it run, that's on you, that's not on us.
And then the other thing, the implementation of a base fee is really important when you do a conservation rate structure. Because what you're doing, this is kind of a weird thing, and the water industry is one of the only industries where you're telling customers to use less of the product that you're producing. Not many industries do that. So that base fee is gonna ensure that you still have a steady revenue stream if that conservation signal ends up being stronger than you anticipated. And they go, oh my God, we're gonna actually start watering responsibly now, and your volume goes down, so your volumetric revenue would go down commensurately. You've got that base fee revenue stream in there to make sure that you just don't drop off there.
Well, and I don't think we're telling them to not use the product, we're just telling them to use what they need.
Exactly.
How is this gonna affect our 2 car washes?
They're a commercial client, so they're gonna fall under the commercial rates.
So it should,
They're not on the irrigation
No.
plan anymore.
No,
I think we already shut that off with the one up there.
right.
Okay.
and then on the commercial rate side, on wastewater, a 3% increase. Once again, that's a function, we saw we're increasing the residential by 7%, the commercial only by 3%. That's really just a cost of service. As we did our cost allocations, we found that the amount of costs that are allocated to the commercial class were not, you didn't see as much of an increase in those costs. So you don't need quite the magnitude of an increase there that you saw on the residential side. And then your parks and recs fee, base fee is going up 8% increase. Your street lighting fee going up 2%. And then construction water, once again, related to peak demands. It fluctuates a lot, so you're seeing a 17% increase in those charges.
For the construction piece.
For the base fee, but your volumetric charges are staying the same.
Okay. And the street lighting fee, we've never even come close to using that. Why is that going up?
Yeah, I didn't see that until now, but I think we had previously talked about, Harold, we were gonna keep that
And we can
static.
adjust
Yeah.
that.
So it's gonna stay static to $3.75.
Can you read it?
I mean, we still can't get all LED out
Make
here.
these changes.
Yeah.
I mean, we could push on MEEA, since we are
Which
the
would
largest.
probably decrease the cost even more to where we could lower that rate even more.
Right. So, I'm actually meeting with their new VP of Finance soon. So that was actually one of the things that I was wanting to talk to him about.
I only ask that because as I drive around the city, it's nonstop replacing every light with LED lights, which is gonna be a huge savings
Right.
in town. And we, compared to the town or the city, it's such a small effort for them to come out and replace what we have to save that money. So I don't understand where the pushback comes from there.
Yeah, like I said, I'm gonna have a meeting with them and lay out some facts.
I appreciate it. We just like to cover stuff as it comes up.
Oh, no.
So I don't forget.
No worries, I understand, I do the same thing, where it doesn't get done. So this is what all of your constituents are gonna ask you about. This is an all-in bill, water, sewer, parks and rec, street lighting. And you'll see for a customer that uses 6,000 gallons a month of water, their bill will go from $203.14 to $207.47. So $4.50 a month.
And do we have an average, like, water use across the district?
That's pretty close.
6,000 is what we,
Yeah. This is based off of the consumption data that
My,
they were given.
my bill's
Okay.
$187 a month,
So is mine.
so we just don't use much water.
You guys use
That's
this
good.
one. Yeah. But the average is around 6,000 gallons a month.
All right. Now, system development fees. These are one-time charges assessed to new development to pay for the infrastructure needed to meet their demands. They're also known as tap fees, capacity fees, impact fees, plant investment fees, kind of depends on where you are. Right now, y'all have both a tap fee and a system development fee. We've recommended you just make it one fee and call it a system development fee. You might notice by my accent that I'm not from Colorado, I'm from the South. And back east, a tap fee is the actual fee that you pay for two guys to come out with a backhoe and tap into the main and install a meter and, get service to your house. Out here, it's kind of gets mixed up, but system development fee is really a more accurate description of what it is. You're asking them to pay for the cost that you incur to provide that capacity to meet the demands of that development.
You'll see this line on the new budget.
Okay. Going back one slide real quick before we go on, or actually, I guess it'd be two slides.
Here?
There, yeah, 3, 4 slides. Now, we said this was going out to 2028.
Well, these are the rates for '24. 2008 we'll have more increases built into the plan. We can get you that information, and that'll be in the report that you get.
Because I think at this point where we're talking about developing a strategic plan going forward and providing as much future data as we can to the residents and even for the new developers or whoever's coming out here, I think the more we can plan ahead. One, I think it shows that we are thinking of our community and the folks that live out here, but the other is just being flat out transparent. This is what the rate's gonna look like 3 years from now. I think when people buy houses now, when we're talking about these houses out here going for $700,000 to $1 million, when you can show them that this is what at least in this area of utilities, is gonna be for the next 4 years projected out. I think that gives them a better understanding of not only their interest rate, but also a better grasp of this is what you're gonna have to pay every month
Okay.
to live here. Because that's one of the biggest complaints we hear about people who buy houses is, my real estate agent never said that I had to pay $200 a month, or never said I had to pay for a rec center fee or any of this. So I think being able to provide them with a solid study and a solid build out, and we all know it's not, if something changes, an earthquake and half the houses fall down or something, God forbid anything like that happens. But if some catastrophe happened, then it would change, but we can still provide them some insight of.
Yes.
We are forward thinking. We're providing something to folks that I don't think any other district's providing them right now. We are providing them the best information and knowledge we can to help them make a better financial decision on their part, which I think shows a lot of forward thinking from all of you guys.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think our neighbors to the north would want that information to get out.
I'm not,
No, I'm not saying
Yeah.
our information, I'm saying I don't think they would put that out.
but that's the difference. We
Right.
care.
Sure.
They care about selling houses. I care about keeping the folks we have here, and providing them the best products we can, or the best, representation we can.
So Stacy and I actually talked about this, and so I'm going to work with Harold and his team to come up with like a one-pager that we can put up on our website, we can put on social media, we can even mail it, we can email it, that will be easy for people to understand, to read, and they have all the pertinent information like you're talking about, Troy. I think it's a great idea. I think the more transparent we can be, the less concerns, issues, the board, my office is going to handle, because we're putting that information out ahead of time. And it's not one of those situations where, oh, you knew all along, you could have told me and you did it, and that's just not true. I think this district is very.
We don't have 200 residents in here screaming, yelling, ready to freaking put us to the stake outside every meeting, because we provide them with information like this, and we do think about them first. And so that's kind of what I just want to make sure that they know that the efforts are being put in place to put them first.
Right, and we will be, we've got a report that's close to being done. We wanted to make sure we incorporated anything that happened here tonight in that, and so that will be coming to you. A lot of our clients will put that report on their website and say, here's all the information you need about why your water and sewer bills are increasing over time. System development fees. So, there are a couple of methodologies we use to calculate system development fees that are consistent with any state statutes related to the development and assessment of system development fees. And so there are really three approaches, and the third one is a combination of the first two. There's the system buy-in approach, where you've got a bunch of assets that are already out there. You've paid for them, or you're in the process of paying for them by paying debt service, and that provides a certain amount of capacity. If you were a system that had a lot of excess capacity in those existing assets, then we would recommend you just do the system buy-in approach. And what that involves is determining the value of those assets. So we've got your asset records, we know how much it cost for you to put them in, we know how much they've depreciated since they were put in, and that gives us the net book value of those assets. And we then divide that by units of capacity, in this case, equivalent residential units. And that gives us the fee, that is, the cost of providing each of those units of capacity. Now, in a system like yours, where you anticipate the need to build more assets to meet the demand you see coming, that's what we call the incremental approach. And some utilities will simply look at that piece to determine what they're, basically they've got enough capacity to meet the needs of everybody that's there. Anybody else that comes in has to pay their fair share of the cost of those projects we're building to meet their demands. In your case, you've got a combination of both. You've got some existing capacity, plus you've got this new capacity coming down the road that you need to pay for. So it's called the hybrid approach. It's a combination of the two, where you look at the combination of your existing assets plus the value of the assets you're going to build. And that's the hybrid approach. So here is a walkthrough of how we did that. So we look at your water system value. Right now, your water system it has a value of $38.3 million. Those are the assets that are in place. Your wastewater system, $21.4 million, and Parks and Recs, $2.something million in value. We also include your cash reserves in there. That is an asset that can be used to benefit your customers. So that is included in it. And then we take out your outstanding debt principal because you haven't paid that yet. So as you pay that debt, that adjustment will decrease. And then your equivalent meters, and that's basically in your system a 3/4 inch, 5/8 inch meter. The amount of demand that meter places on your system is an equivalent residential unit. But equivalent meters is the same thing in that a 2-inch meter is equivalent to a multiple of 5/8 inch meters. I don't have the capacity ratios memorized, so I can't tell you exactly what that is. But, so, from,
JD's on it, he said for it.
So the buy-in fee for each of these, your water buy-in component is $7,266, wastewater $5,147, Parks and Rec $1,302. Then we look at your 10-year CIP, identify the projects in there that are related to growth. It's not everything in your CIP, because some of your CIP is repair and replacement. So we just look at the cost of those things going in, the debt that you're gonna incur to get there, so that your incremental cost of each of these utilities is, you know, you're gonna $16.7 million in new water assets that are gonna go to meeting the demand of future growth. On the wastewater, it's significantly less, Parks and Rec, $5,368,000. You then divide that by the future equivalent meters. So those assets are gonna be able to meet the demand of 2,000 new equivalent 5/8 inch meters on the water side, wastewater 8,700, and then Parks and Rec 3,000 new residents coming in using the parks. And the incremental fee for each one is then added to the buy-in fee to come up with your recommended system development fees by the utility. And you'll see how that compares to where you are now. So on the water, we're saying increase it by 8% this year, and you'll see we're able to project this out on the system development fees. We're showing you 5 years worth of it. So they're gonna be going up. On the wastewater side, they're gonna stay relatively flat. At this point in time, Parks and Rec going up significantly.
So we're still gonna have to have a separate tap fee for wastewater,
Well, no, we're,
for one reason,
okay.
because we have to deal with paintbrush.
Nope, so they'll pay the 38% of the prevailing rate, which will be that rate right there.
Okay. Do we charge them all those things now?
Yes, so they pay 38% of the current tap fee. Now that tap fee, that word goes away, it is just now a system development charge. They are paying 38% of that prevailing rate. That is what the IGA spells out.
Okay. I can just see that turning into a headache.
And it may, but they have no legal grounds to balk at it. And that district's not being harmed, right? Their developers are the ones that are paying the fee. It's not the district that has anything to do with it.
And that is all I have to say for tonight.
That's it, huh?
You want more? I can take you in, I can open up the model and show you how we allocate all the costs.
It
Hey,
is-
when we have our water presentation, we'll invite you back.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see that.
Isn't that cool?
No, I thought it was very informative, I really liked that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
I probably enjoyed that part of working on the budget better than the budget.
How many of these would you say your company does?
How many rate
Rate
studies?
studies.
Oh, gosh, probably 1,000 a year, all over the country.
Wow.
I've been doing it for 26 years, so I've seen pretty much everything.
So just a question, you had said in the south, they do it by development fee.
Well, they do development fees, it's just that term tap fee
Okay.
was really just, that's meant to be the cost of tapping into the system.
Is that different throughout the
Oh,
US on
yeah,
how they do it?
everywhere it's different. Just the terminology, that's one thing that frustrates me, that we can't kind of all come together and let's decide on what we're gonna call these things. But
That would lean towards nationalism, and that's not.
No, we
okay.
don't want to do that. No.
Plus, not all mains are equally buried, still in the south, and that they're very shallow.
Right.
Whereas we're here, we're 5, 6 feet deep.
Yeah.
And so to cut a street and put in a tap, that would really incur a lot of cost. While the developer, while it's being developed, that absorbs all the costs, so you don't have to go on the street and cut in there, replace the asphalt, compact it, and then bring it into the property. It's already in the property.
And that is one thing I neglected to say. When we're doing that, the system development fees and looking at your assets, we recognize that developers contribute the transmission, distribution, collection system. So those are not included in that asset value. They've already paid for that. We can't ask them to pay for that again.
Right.
So those are excluded. I forgot to point that out during the presentation.
No, that was very good, thank you.
Sure.
What is the ask, so is this just part of the budget going into next year, the ask?
Yes,
Or is
so everything that you saw that's proposed is part of the 2024 budget.
this? Okay.
So in order to approve the budget, you have to approve all the changes that we're making to the rate structure, which we'll do at the board meeting next month.
And you should have the report.
Glad you're gonna be here.
I will be on the phone just like Sherry.
Well, and I just thought it
physically
was-
won't be here.
I think that that is just something, I think that we've gotten away out here from being able to provide even realtors with, here is a projection for your clients, or your prospective clients out here, if you wanna grab one of these prospective homeowner packets or whatever that we can give out, saying this is what your projected rate would be over the next 3 to 5 years. If they're military and they're looking to be here for 2 to 4 years, that's very beneficial to them because they know their rates over the next 2 to 4 years, and then they're out if they decide to leave. So very good, thank you.
Well,
What is the recommendation for when we should do another rate study?
well, I think it would be good if we continued a relationship over the next couple of years, not doing a full rate study, but working with Carter as things change and being able to, provide input into, okay, gosh, that wastewater treatment plant's costing a third more than we thought it was gonna cost or something. We can help factor that in, but we recommend you do a rate study at least every 5 years. And I've worked with some utilities that do a rate study every year, and I'm glad they hire me to do it, but, I don't think that's really necessary, because the reason you do a rate study every 5 years is because, a lot of things can change in 5 years, and so 5 years from now, you might see that your irrigation demand has dropped significantly as a result of this tiered volumetric rate. So at that time, we'll be able to recognize that their peak demands are not as high, and their rate will recognize that. So, and, the other time you do a rate study is you're significantly changing the way you're doing business. It could be, you get a large development that comes in and their demand patterns are significantly different than the rest of your customers. It might prompt you to do a look and readjust your rates. But every 5 years is kind of a rule of thumb.
Interesting.
Good info. Thank
Harold,
you.
thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So we are needing to vote on are we voting tonight on a?
No, everything that we're discussing
In the
tonight is
structure.
just discussion.
Okay.
All voting will happen next month during the public hearing for the rates and fees as well as the budget. So everything tonight is just a review.
And if you do think of a question, tomorrow at breakfast or something, let Carter know. And he'll make
Well, I've seen
sure.
your contact information on there, and we also have the slides that were emailed, so
Yeah. feel free to shoot me an
Don't
email.
worry, I'll.
Just copy Carter on it, so he knows that we're talking.
That's right.
I'll just message him and say, hey, behind the scenes, Harold said that we should.
I
Thank
just want to say one last thing before you guys move on, that just a big thank you to you, Harold, and your team. It's been a very long process, a long journey, and we've had, I can't even tell you how many conversations.
We've had a lot, we've been on the
But
phone a lot.
it has been really great to work with Raptelis. I would love to continue to work with them, and I think it's been a great relationship for the district. And I think long-term, having outside consultants to work with us provides even more transparency to our community about what are we doing, why are we doing it. So I just, couldn't thank Raptelis enough for everything that they've done and what they will continue to do for us.
Well, I'm kind of hoping the efforts that you guys have made and the efforts that the district has made may push some of the other districts to make the same decisions in their rate studies and things, to where we can actually, everybody can take a hard look at how they're operating going forward, and maybe, I don't know, change course a little bit, make things a little bit easier on the community members. I don't know, that's kind of, our rates are kind of all over with everything that goes on out here, so it kind of goes up here and down here, and but thank you.
Yeah, well, and one thing you'll get in that report too is we'll do a comparison of your rates with all of your neighboring communities. So you can just get a feel for where you stand with respect to them. You gotta be careful with that kind of thing because, they might have had a big rate increase recently to pay for a capital project that.
They did.
So, but you'll be able to see that. So customers like to see that, hey, gosh, my uncle that lives over in whatever is paying 20% more for water and sewer than I am. That's pretty cool.
Well, and I think that's kind of where this district's a lot different, because I believe since 2011, when they did a large rate increase to catch up, this district has been pretty well grounded in gradual increase to not have a shock effect on your residents of, hey, we got to raise rate 15% or 30% or 50% next year to catch up, which is a huge benefit to the community as a whole.
Helps
So,
them figure out what they're gonna spend.
all right, we'll move on to Park and Rec report.
Budget overview.
I thought that's what we just did. Oh, no, this was the rate study.
Yeah, this was the rate
No,
study.
I don't want to talk about the budget. That was enough. Let's leave it on a good note. Great rate study.
I told you when we were doing the budget, I was like, oh my goodness, this is way better than doing the budget.
I mean, we don't have to.
All
We
right.
just approve it as is.
No, let's talk about it.
Well, we're not approving
We're
anything.
not talking, approving it. Let's talk about the overview of the budget for next year.
Okay.
Now we got the rate study.
Yeah. So,
Do you want to use the?
do you want me to use
Is it in color?
It's a spreadsheet, so.
Oh,
No,
It's
just
just
fire
the
away.
budget that I've already sent out.
We already have it.
So the district directors met with the budget committee, so Stacy and Kelsey, and we reviewed, not only, we had Harold actually on that call as well, and so went over kind of how the rate study is gonna impact the budget. So really, the biggest thing is, on the budget, you're getting rid of the tap fee line item essentially, and you're going to the systems development charge. So from a revenue perspective, that's the biggest change that you're gonna see. Yes, we are proposing rate increases on our commercial irrigation accounts. We're proposing an overall wastewater increase.
When we've made or are in the process of making these big changes.
I think the answer is yes, is that when,
So if we didn't make these changes,
you
would we have
did-
to increase it 10%?
You would have to increase it, I don't know what it was, I would have to go run the math on that, but the issue is paying, and you know this, John, is paying a vendor to do all of this drainage work would have cost us millions of dollars.
It's
over
not,
the term,
it's
right?
just not that, it's
I know.
maintaining it in the future.
But I'm saying if you said, no, let's not buy heavy equipment, let's not increase staff size so that we can do those things in-house, you're actually reducing your overall cost. So even though, yes, I'm saying it's an 8% increase, if we didn't do the things that we're looking to do by keeping these things in-house, the answer would be you would see costs ballooning even higher than they are now. They may be more in the form of a capital project instead of what you would see on a P&L or in the budget, but overall, you're still gonna have to spend the money one way or another. So I think by doing what we're doing now and trying to bring as much in-house as possible, we are actually going to save money in the long term. You may see an 8% increase for next year, but that could level off over the future 3 or 4 years, because we have invested so heavily in the last 2 years and then this upcoming year for that future.
What was our increase last year? I know the year before it was 0.
I think it was 6%, I'll tell you.
And one of the biggest increases I'm hearing right, Carter, too, is the debt services that we haven't been paying in the past.
It's the debt coverage ratio.
Debt
So you're not,
coverage ratio.
it's not necessarily you paying anything, it's just that you have to have a certain amount of net income.
I didn't think we ever had a problem with that. I thought we were always at
Well,
least 1.25.
the issue is that the way the bank looks at our debt is it pulls all of our revenue, all revenue streams. So what has happened in the past is that water, for the most part, has made the most amount of net income, which has covered everybody else for debt coverage ratio. What
Good job,
I
JD.
am suggesting, and I actually did it for this year, is started to move the needle to where each enterprise stands on its own when it comes to their own debt coverage ratio. So instead of the bank looking at it's all revenue, I'm looking at it very specifically and saying your debt in Parks and Rec is this. Your DCR needs to be this. So I need to have revenues high enough to cover what they should cover. That way, we are not reliant on water to offset when it comes to the debt coverage ratio.
We've been
So
working
does
on
that
this.
mean we're gonna decrease water? Since they're no longer covering for Parks and Rec?
Well, what you saw is we lowered the base rate for residential, we kept the volumetric the same, but we changed the rate structure for both commercial and irrigation clients. So yes, you're seeing a slight decrease in residential, but your cost share is going to be much different. So if you think about a pie, 3/4 of that pie, for the most part, has been residential. So you guys have been taking on the burden and subsidizing commercial and irrigation. In this budget for 2024, it is balanced. It is saying you as a residential, you are only gonna pay what is your true cost of service, and same goes for commercial and irrigation.
You heard that here. We have balanced the budget.
The other thing though, John, to your question about are we gonna see a decrease in water, is that unfortunately, we have an aging infrastructure issue with water, right? We've talked about this in the past. We have a lot of R&R that needs to happen. We're going through it right now with the Theriot project, right? Well, we're gonna see those costs continue to climb. You know, current CIP plan, which goes out to 2031, for water alone, where water and wastewater combined, is $75 million. So from now to 2031, our engineers are saying we are going to have to put up $75 million in infrastructure costs.
Okay, how much of that is expanding the plant?
28.
Okay.
Still significant.
And how much is in the other different regulatory areas?
So that 28 million, 73% is regulatory improvement. But you look at water alone, right, which is, that's what we're talking about, you have significant infrastructure costs are gonna have to be burdened, you know? The good news is we're continuing to grow, right? So we have the ability to use our system development fees in the future to help offset those costs. And that's why it's really important that we continue to fund the water development fund, right, to pay for those projects. So whether it's an R&R project or it's a growth-related project, water has the ability to cash fund the majority of those projects. The one big project, which is still not finalized, is the Fawa pipeline, right? Once the Younger water is all taken care of and we start to need to bring that water into the district, we have to have some mechanism to get it to us. So if we're gonna go into the Fawa project, there's lots of different angles we can go on there. You know, it's, do you pay all up front? Do you pay over time on an annual basis? Whatever that case may be, you still gotta pay for it. So there is significant costs that are going to be incurred by this district over the next 10 years. So we are putting rates in play now to set us up for that.
But not total cost, because we are splitting costs with
Correct.
our partners in follow-on. So
Correct.
Our total cost could be much greater than
Yes.
75 million.
If we were to
had
go in
partners.
on a pipeline ourselves, I would estimate that cost would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $70 to $80 million.
Just for that.
If we did it on our own. Our buy-in at this point is roughly $22 million. So a third or fourth of the cost by going in as a partnership.
Okay,
Thank you.
Any, Stacy, based off our conversations, is there any particular area you would like me to cover with the board tonight?
No.
No? Board,
No,
any-
because they already asked it, because we were chatting in our meeting that if we don't increase it and project the next 5 years out and put those funds in reserves, we're gonna have an increase like our neighbor did, and we make the front page news of a 200% rate increase.
Correct.
And Carter and I decided we didn't want to be on the front page. So, we decided that this approach was, better
It's
for.
not a bad place to be. Any press is good press these days.
Oh, gosh, but not that press. So we decided that, doing it in increments and putting it into, a separate account, so that way it's ready for those large dollar amount, projects. But no, that was it. The other part of the budget, I am actually going to wait until, executive session. And then I'm actually gonna ask Ethan, our directors and our heads,
To validate it.
to wait outside.
I will say, when you think about like a balanced budget, you know, in my eyes is controlling what you can control, right, from the expenses perspective. And right now, the projection for expenses is actually a $611,000 decrease. So if that tells you anything, I think we are doing everything we can to keep overall expenses reasonable, so that we can cash fund these projects, right? The last thing that I want to have happen as the director of finance for this district is I have to come to you as a board and say, I need a 25% increase to fund these projects. I don't want to do that. And so we're going to control what we can control in expenses, but we're going to need some help on this revenue side. And I think the rate structure that Reptelis has come up with in the proposals is the way for us to not only be stable in our guaranteed revenue streams, but also have that future mindset as the forward thinking that we are all talking about.
So that's the real answer, is we would rather cash fund
Yes,
than take on more debt. That's the
Correct.
real answer here.
yes.
Yeah,
That is
100%.
why we are doing what we are doing, because in the long run, it'll save the district
Yes,
who knows how much money.
yeah.
correct.
I mean, think about.
So that's
when-
I think that's the way it should be
And a
presented.
gradual
Yeah.
increase instead of boom.
I mean, you think about when we restructured our debt last year,
Yeah.
right? That restructuring saved us $35 million in interest
Yeah.
over the life of the loans. That's a lot of money that you as residents don't have to pay now, right? So if we can continue to do things like that and cash fund, we are gonna put this district in a very, very strong position for the future.
And I think the only real argument I know I've been here, this is 5 years now, and I say that a lot, but this will be probably the first time when we start talking about some of these different agreements in the future plan of the district where I actually feel like we are starting to turn the corner on forward planning and planning for the future instead of just playing catch up from 2011 to 2016 decisions that were made. And I feel like we're finally gaining ground to where we're able to forward project. And I know we'll get the argument all day long that, 5-10 years from now, that's not gonna affect me, I'm not gonna be here anymore. Well, the simple fact of the matter is, basic function in society should be, we need to leave it better than we found it. And does this planning that we're doing now leave the district better than we found it? And I think no matter how anybody looks at it, whether nearsighted or farsighted, it leaves it better than we found it. We're not all gonna be here forever. And that should be really what the community thinks about is, does this put us on a solid footing going forward? And I truly believe that being able to cash fund a lot of this stuff with the instability in the economy and things is gonna be a huge benefit to us going forward, as residents. My 2 cents.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Can we go next?
Go for it.
Next.
Next, you ready? Next?
No, you normally say what's next.
What's next?
Now it is Parks and Rec.
Park and Rec report. What you got?
Here we go.
You couldn't have said any better about investing, and we invest in infrastructure, we do the roofing. Last month, we were able to invest in our greatest asset, I think, and that's our staff. And myself, Stephanie, Craig, well, I'm gonna put them ahead of on that. But we went to the Colorado Park and Recreation Association annual conference and got to see some pretty cool things, so I invited them. Craig unfortunately had to step out, he had to go do some adult basketball tonight. So, but I'm gonna let Stephanie go first so she can lead after. She's had a long day herself, so if you wanna go, and I'll follow, I'll be Craig, and then I'll keep mine short.
Okay, yeah, mine's short, so I don't expect much. But, so I thank you, I really want to thank Marcus, first of all, for allowing us to go, because we haven't had the opportunity before. Honestly, I didn't even know what CPRA was. I think Jed mentioned it one time, and he's like, hey, do you want to keep this CPRA membership? And I'm like, sure, I don't care, what does it do? And he finally came in and he's like, hey, this is what CPRA is, this is what we offer, let's go to the conference. And you know, I didn't really know what to expect, but it was really awesome. I got to meet everybody, a ton of people from Colorado, so everyone from Colorado, from different organizations, different recreation centers, they came out and we all met. We were able to go to different sessions that were targeted, more for, there's sessions for leadership, there were sessions for, like Perkins and Will came out and they were talking about different projects that they have done in the past, which I was gonna talk about because, just the ideas that come from the conference were amazing. So
Short,
things you wouldn't
I
even
can't
think
see.
about.
You know,
So
half
for
my stuff is green
examples,
lips.
there's recreation centers that are doing robotics classes, broadcasting, podcasting, mental health. They have mental health spaces. They have clinical health spaces. They do nutrition classes. have esports, they have all kinds of these things that we have never even thought about doing. So just, I mean, being able to talk to these people and say like, how were you able to do it? What was the, you know, the company that came out and they built it for you? What did you like about them? What didn't you like about them? Would you recommend them in the future? So really just the bouncing ideas and brainstorming off of these people was awesome. They came with pictures, so we got to see all these pictures of these amazing esports classes that they have. There's study classes, they have computers that are available for the community with internet. So there's study spaces that may not be available for some students at home. So it was really awesome just to bounce ideas off of each other. The leadership classes were awesome too. I got to learn more about myself, the way I lead, and what I need to work on. So, I mean, I've bought a few books already that I'm already starting to read on leadership, and I mean, my brain has not stopped since that. I'm constantly thinking of new ideas and what we can bring to the community, and it was really awesome. And this year I think he's pushing me to volunteer, which I would love to do, but we're volunteering for the conference so that we ultimately get to go without a charge. So I'm really excited. I love the opportunity. It was just anything and everything that I can absorb and learn is what I'm going to do. So the more opportunities that Marcus can give me, I will take advantage of, and I hope that you guys can allow us to take advantage of those opportunities in the future.
She sounds like she had a horrible time.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Horrible. So,
miserable.
you know, and we really gotta commend you for that. So, I mean, it's been 3.5 years we've been preaching, you know, our job is always to train our replacement and make sure that there's no fall off if we ever had to leave for some reason. And so you getting your staff involved and bringing them up to speed behind you and leading them that way is remarkable to see it finally starting to happen. To where someone would be able to step in if you had to step away. We never know what challenges life brings, but having that kind of repetitiveness in operations is critical. We went through a lot of change over a 3-year period between directors and staff members and different folks. And we have some people in critical positions that you know, it's hard to train replacements because of the certifications that they hold. But we still got to try. There's got to be a stopgap in there. So very good job. It is definitely good to hear that we're starting to see that that going on with the leadership we have in the district now, that you guys are starting to make that adjustment and that stuff happen. So thank you.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. It's easy when you step in and you have good people. It's not always the case when you come into an organization, and I feel we have great people. So to support our great people is something that we want to keep doing, and when we look at our budget next year, same thing, more training opportunities and way to do more, because ultimately that'll make the district better with all these new ideas, networking opportunities, and things like that, getting to meet other people that are real close. I mean, we had a great interaction with Whitefield, who just built a brand new recreation center and a unique funding mechanism with the school district and things like that. So those are relationships that will met somebody who just acquired a golf course. We've talked about that before.
Hey, I'll be down at Whitefield tomorrow night.
Hey, stop by the rec center.
Falcon
in 3
football
months.
versus Mesa Ridge tomorrow night at Whitefield.
In 3 months, they hit their year and revenue numbers in just 3 months.
Wow.
From what they're projecting. So they're doing great things
Awesome.
out there. So great people to learn from. So.
Yes, it's amazing to see everything that they offer to their communities. I mean, there's so many different things. I didn't talk about was the Enchanted Hills Camp Nature Trail. It's a camp for I can't remember where it's at in the country, but it's a camp for the blind and deaf. And so they have this trail system. They had a devastating fire in 2017. So their plan was to make it better than it was ever before. So they were gonna implement parts of the pathways. They were gonna have little raised metal edges, so if their cane hits it, you know, that's the edge of the trail. Don't go further that way. They also are implementing like when the PVC when their stick goes over it, then it'll engage like sounds. So when they're walking, it'll have sounds, it'll signify a marker and indicates that the person there is a station off to the site where they can learn the Braille about their surroundings. So there's just there's inclusiveness that we can do, that we just haven't thought of in the past. And so there's just so much we can bring to the table that we haven't even thought of.
No putt-putt golf.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
But, and one thing I'll just touch on, I'll actually let Craig talk to you guys in the future about it, because he has a pretty comprehensive list here of stuff he's talking. But it was also really good about seeing new vendors and new product lists, things that we can implement that are gonna ultimately save us money. When you get to have these one-on-one dialogue with these different vendors, and we've already set up meetings with them, from looking at our front-end system, similar, we have ActiveNet now, looking at what others are offering. They were all there, we could have face-to-face, and now we're setting up demos and different way we can disinfect the pool and things like that. So there's a lot of cool things out there.
Is that up and running, our ActiveNet?
Yeah, ActiveNet's up and running. We've pivoted, and that's on one of my next steps, we pivoted on the app. The only reason is the amount of money, put it in the realm of all the other apps. And it's kind of behind the times in what it's offering. So now we've started doing some demos with a company called Fusion. We met a company at a conference, it was called Explore. There's another one that we Dexco. So we have different demos, because ultimately what we want to do is we need app-based functioning. We want to be able to push out notifications, which I do have a pretty cool thing that we just implemented today. And then also trying to figure out some of the things that to integrate with Tyler. ActiveNet doesn't now, so end-of-day cash reporting, an import, where if you're a resident, you set up an account at district, it'll automatically show up in our system. So now you at least the head of the household will. So now when you come in, you're in the system, and we just put the rest of your family in. So these are things that would be good. Ways that we have a barcode on your phone, so when you go to right now, here, we have it's tough, it's a challenge here to keep people in and out, where now, with different systems have the opportunity where we actually scan that barcode, we can see you over at RCE and let you into this facility, just like we do the gym over there. So now when you're bringing 5 or 6 people here, only one's a resident, we'll actually start seeing that. So those are the things we're trying to work through that Active couldn't do for us. So that's why we've kind of pivoted and said, if we're gonna make this change, we have until April, because when our active contract is, let's do it, and let's do it right.
Can it process debit and credit cards before October 31st?
Oh.
Well, and that's a big deal, because right now Active charges what, 4%? 4% per transaction, where some of the ones
Okay,
have
let's
flat
go.
rates of, I think it was 9 cents? 9 cents versus 4%. So if we do a $300 transaction, I mean, these start adding up over time. So those are the things we're looking at too. So.
What I heard was their new system will communicate with Tyler.
Yes.
So Tyler was worth implementing.
And that's
Thank
what
you,
we're,
Stacy.
and that's an important thing to us. And that's why we started looking way at Active, because Active won't, but others do, because they already do in other government organizations. Don't fail it now. So, and one of the cool things that we
I got to
implemented
sit with
today,
them on Friday.
because we do want to get that push notification out. So there's a pretty cool product that we're doing now. It's Statusfy, if I'm saying it right. And it's push out notifications. So we're going to start doing a social media blitz on that, pushing that out, QR codes in the facilities. You can sign up for it and on your app, or you can call in a number. So if you don't even have an app, you can just call in a phone number, a dedicated number, and you get listings. So if we have let's say this weekend, we have football this weekend, and it snows 3 inches, and we need to cancel football. Now they can call in, the teams can call in and say, and we program it, and they know that their game's canceled or rescheduled, or they can look on their app to see this. When we make changes, if you allow notifications on your phone, it'll tell you. And the biggest thing was getting people to get it, but it's saying fitness classes, child watch, any RCE, if we have a 2-hour delay, this will allow us to push out this information so that our residents know what's going on. Especially when we learned a lot of things through COVID, we have instructor illnesses. trying to keep people away so they don't come in sick and get everybody sick. So we do have more class cancellation because of structural illness. This is a way that we can actually push that out. So we'll start making the big push to get everybody signed up, or at least the information. The cool thing about this product is that you don't have to have a phone. It has a dedicated phone number that you can call, like a weather hotline, to get the information. So anybody will be able to use it. It's super reasonable. It's $400 for the year. So this will be something that we'll be able to always use, that we can just utilize, and it's made for sporting events, but we're gonna use it for the facility and fitness classes too. So we'll start there. I know you'll be excited about that. You can tell your wife that starting tomorrow, we'll get you that QR code. So. Any questions? Oh, Falcon Park, you mentioned lighting. Lighting's done. So lighting's done at Falcon. Cool thing is, because we still had about $40,000 to close out Falcon. We got a quote for $26,000 to put a concrete curbing around Falcon, around the turf, and they've already started. They'll be done tomorrow. So we'll have a 3-foot curb, concrete curb around the turf, which was great, because looking at it, that weed and stuff already started peeling away the staples from, it was crawling underneath the turf and peeling up the edges. So that goes away. The erosion, the dirt on the field, that goes away now. And to close it out even more, we're gonna do another 3 foot of cobble around that. And then we're gonna get the irrigation reinstalled out there. We're gonna put the irrigation inside the cobble so that it doesn't get broken by mowers or anything driving on that. And then we're gonna, we have that new tractor coming in. Part of that is a seed attachment. And then we're gonna reseed it ourselves to prevent erosion in the future. So that cost, so that hopefully by this time next year, that park is nice, green and clean.
Awesome.
So
Then we'll be done with that.
then we'll be done with Falcon.
We can move on to Horseshoe.
Horseshoe, community, they've all got some things that they need. Horseshoe, the irrigation, the drainage issues, that something we really need to address out there. But yes, we'll start moving on to that. And maybe the best news of all, the pony that I ordered last winter is finally.
Oh, the spring horse, okay.
Yeah, the spring
I was like,
horse.
what?
No,
What?
It's our
the
new lawn
spring
maintenance
horse
system.
is finally here, concrete poured today, and it'll be up
Yeah,
tomorrow.
residents, don't mind all the goats. That's the new mowing program.
You know what, I should buy some goats and put them in Safeway.
They don't
Safeway
require
farm.
benefits. Yeah. They don't require maintenance.
Where were you 6 months ago? I could have used that. This community loves goats.
Now I'm gonna get a bunch of
We do.
emails. What? You're mowing with goats?
So, any questions? Good, well, thank you.
Thank you,
It was a blast, and we can't wait to do more next year.
Are you ready?
What's next?
Next will be the water report, item 13.
See, if you took away the podium.
Oh, well, you can put it back if you want. I just couldn't see back there.
You could have said on that binder.
All right, you can also be doing the wastewater report too.
Even better.
So, a few things we're gonna do with the daylight pump station update. So all the yard piping is completed now. That means the sewer main, the sewer connection from the plant is connected. The water tap going into the buildings inside. The piping and plumbing inside the building has been pressure tested, and one of the pictures you will see here in a few minutes. Glacier is also working on the grading around the plant. They're about 85% right now, currently. They're removing a bunch of the spoils that we have accumulated from the building footprint and from the dig areas. There's been a significant amount of dirt that they have to haul out to the wastewater plant. As well as they're installing the process piping on the filters and the distribution pipe inside. Installed the ballards outside the garage door and added the concrete apron. That's just a little small sidewalk. as well as pressure testing all the piping, like we were talking about, in and out of the plant, and install the main distribution panel. And then we're gonna talk about some of the pictures here that you're gonna see in your packet. So we have the first picture, you should see the building minus the 250K tank. We'll come back to this picture momentarily. And then inside, this is the start of the filter process. Today they got this filter, this is filter number 3. And then the other picture following this, there's going to be where you see a pressure test station, the filter plant number 1. That's coming up there, it's been rerouted. They got the pressure testing system there. It takes a little bit. That's past the criteria that we would do out in the field anyway with the contractor. But we do the same. We're a little more rigid in our specs. But in this area here, where they've done with the pressure testing, there's more piping that they installed to come up to this contact chamber.
Question about that picture.
Yes, sir.
Are those pictures? Will we in some point in time insulate that building, or is it?
No, that building will be insulated and sheeted.
Okay.
It would be like a normal plant should be, a complete finished product. They are in the process of getting electrical approved tomorrow, because it's roughed in, electrical has been in there. And as soon as that is approved, the insulation will go on there and the sheeting will go on there sometime next week. Okay? And then this is just another side view of those filters. I wish I had took another picture of the pump station where they have the 3 pumps lined out. So that would be another picture at the next board meeting. All right. The Younger water update, and I make a correction. I have the wrong date for the due diligence process. Be completed. It's November 17th of 23 and not 10/31. So as part of the continuing the due diligence, there was an issue that came up about the MVE, that's Mountain View Electric, easements that they had procured before we came in there to have the pipe alignment. It's just standard practice. They just give a letter to date and says we have easements there. And it'd be no different if we had water line and an easement where they had to cross over with the service. So that has been cleared up, and we're working on those easements adjustments. There's only one left as well as site 4. So the title commitment and all that has been all worked out. And this is before I finish up with this. It was a day later I got that information for the underwater. So it's moving very well. So now we're going to come back to that first picture there on the plant. Show the where the 250,000 gallon tank that was there. Well, this tank had been leaking for some time, and it was on its way to failure. And in this picture, you just don't quite see it really too well, but right in this area, closest to the berm and the driveway right here, that this tank had been leaking and it was settling. In fact, it sunk on one side 6 inches. And around the perimeter area, it sunk 3 inches. So it's always been gradual. And I always looked at that tank and said, man, does that thing look like it's settling? And when we tore it down, the telltale signs where they had heavy equipment lifting the floor out of there as they were cutting into sections, that they had sunk in those wet areas. And it was around the pipe penetrations. So this tank was ready to go. So it would have been a catastrophe, much like what happened in 2014 with the 1 million gallon tank, when we had that big leak on that one. And I don't know if you've heard about that or not, but that's what happened to that tank. The unfortunate thing about this tank, it's supposed to have a 1/4 inch steel. It was less than, in some cases, in some places, was less than 3/16 of an inch. And when the tank was emptied, when we had to take it out of service because they had to make some of these connections here on the north of the plumbing that would go into the new plant,
and rerouting and plumbing going across here from well site, or filter plant 1, there's a line that goes right across in here to the north side of the building. Just think about a straight line across here. And that this penetration was leaking as they were making a tie-in. And so we'd go down there, take a water sample. I said, hey, get a water sample, I want to see what's going on. As this tank was draining down to make this connection. And they say, yeah, okay, it's chlorinated water, we have a leak right there. But that had failed, we had to do a lot of rerouting of valves shutting off to this section there. So I'm glad that we're replacing this tank with a new concrete tank, something more permanent. This was very temporary. So think of something put in 1995, and it only had one rehab on the outside. And if we had done the rehab on the inside, I would not walked on the top of that tank to do inspections.
And that's supposed to happen every 10 years?
The rehab of the tank is dependent on what, every 3 to 5 years of your cleaning your tanks. You have an inspection report, so a diver go in there and they take pictures of cross members. If you have columns in there, support beams that would go hold the roof up, I guarantee I would not walked on that. And I walked on that I'm a pretty heavy guy. And there was already, when we looked inside the tank, opened up in one of the manways, I seen daylight spots in the weld spots in the top of the roof. And then looking at the floor, because you somewhat see some of the rippling in the floor had rippled like, it's supposed to be flat. It was rippled like this. It was pretty quite significant. And there was supposed to be water in there, like a 1 foot of water that you're supposed to pump out of there. There was no water. It was dry. So this talks about aging and infrastructure, replacing. This is sometimes when we talk about replacing aging infrastructure, that's a critical piece of infrastructure. What you would see in the capital improvements in the budget review, that there will be the replacement of the steel tank, of the 1 million gallon tank in 2027, I believe.
It's 2027 or 2026?
Okay. So, when you have something more concrete, like now literally a concrete tank, you have something that could last 100 years before you start having some issues. So just think about, okay, you can put in the cost today, but in the future, you've already recouped your costs in the first 7 to 10 years. So something to think about. All right. State Bank there on the 27th of September had a major leak on their fire line. And so we went over there and shut off their fire line until the repairs that they had to make inside the building. Again, aging infrastructure that was put in. At the time, the specs were different. The bank probably was built in probably somewhere in the 2000s, or maybe a little earlier. I couldn't get an exact date for you, but again, aging infrastructure in place, because we're going to talk about the next thing, the next set of pictures here on the 13th, the Friday the 13th at 3:30 a.m. in the morning. I hate getting alarms, but I was first applying the leak too, because they had the inspector come in and the on-call come in here. You had the main shut down at 4:15 a.m. It's because of a hydrant lateral had failed. So here is the picture of the valve. I'll show the picture of the hole first. It's not really good. I wish it had a better resolution. Right in this shallow area, that's the valve body. In this picture, this is the top of the valve. Got blown off of that valve body. Okay? And you're thinking, okay, well, what happened to the bolts? This valve is dated 2002. It's dated on the side of the bonnet here. You see it's in an open position. I'll point out something here of why we have specs and why we have inspectors today, to make sure that they're following the spec, that we don't have these kind of things that happens and fails in our system. So I don't sleep any better than I had previous to this leak, and now we have to worry about all our valves blowing apart, because we have a lot of valves in there that, before 2006, before they used stainless steel, which is a 306 stainless steel bolt that holds those bonds together, they don't rust, but you still have to have some type of cathodic protection. So how we can tell when we go out in the field, when we clean out our valve cans, this bolt on the top of this operating nut is supposed to be nice and shiny. No, this one is not. And I can tell you, I have broken a valve over there at Courtyards North, your favorite area that you ride by, that you had complained about irrigation. I broke a few valves over there, trying to shut them off. And then I have to be really ginger, because I have no idea what is in that ground that's keeping these from blowing apart, first of all. So there's gonna have to be some valve replacements coming in the near future.
So do we have any idea how many of those we have in the ground?
I knew you were gonna ask.
I knew you knew I was gonna ask.
I was at the estimate probably about 700-800. So we're talking about all 5 and 11. This failed on Crystal Downs. So this pipe has been in the ground before houses were built. So 2000, 2003 timeframe, all this has went in the ground, and they didn't have cathodic protection. And so whenever we decided to do the specs, I think it was 2006 or 2007, where we had gone to CSU specs, and where we had to do practice cathodic protection in that. This would prevent, so this is, I put the valve together at the shop. It sits outside if you want to come and inspect it visually up close. But if it had cathodic protection, you would not have, this is a mega lug that holds the valves and the pipe with a gasket in here and the bolts. You see how much of this mega lug, you see just a little bit of paint right here that's left of this mega lug, but look how much of the soil that is really hot that causes the corrosions and eating and rotting of the joints in that. If it had cathodic protection on this valve, it would protect it, this mega lug, because the bolts would be connected with it, and it would be wrapped in plastic.
So that means all filing 8's that way.
So, yeah, you think filing 8, 1 through 11, except for the bent grass and Falcon Marketplace and places over there.
That's great. Great news.
Just giving you an idea of what your costs of repairs, which there is a equipment repair line item in the budget, so that we can get ahead of this. I estimate we probably will have 20 main breaks before our reason system, like before our winter's end. And we figure that's 20 grand. And 20 of those, that's $400,000.
How
So
hard
good.
are those to inspect?
Well, we can only inspect just the top of the operating nut. If you stick it up, then you're committed to replacing it right then and there. That just means the cost of the asphalt, compaction of materials, calling somebody, come out there and.
Well, I think the standard is just replace them as they break, right?
Well,
It's too much to go
exactly
after up front.
That is exactly, and as long as you have operators who can respond in a very short time.
And we have replacement parts to be able to fix those on them.
So we have a couple valves on the shore, on the lid, or on the shelf.
A couple, how many?
Couple.
A couple.
How long does it take to get them in?
Well, so if you have a crew to come in,
No, I
so
mean the parts. How long does it
Shipping.
take
all
to
the
get
parts,
in?
they have these available on the shelf.
Okay.
The thing is you don't want to have a large inventory of valves on there, because now if you don't have a way of sealing the ends, that little neoprene type EDM material that's on that valve, on the gate of it, there's a metal, I think it's 316 or 306 stainless steel plate that's in there. The shaft's 306 stainless steel, and the operating nut is, got the stainless steel bolt, we got stainless steel bolts around the bonnet. Some of them have a seal pack. Some of them has already an anoid, which is a cathodic protection, that's what you put on there. Some of them you have to grind the outside of the bonnet and have to weld one on there. That's using the thermite clicker and some wire to fuse that onto the valve. And then you put a patch on that so it stays waterproof. There's various ways to keep your infrastructure better than what it was put in there. Now, courtyards north, or courtyards west, and bent grass, the newer sections will have all the new valves and stuff. That's something we don't have to worry about, because all the MJ fittings, the T's, the elbows, the mega lugs that connects all those, repair sleeves, they all get cathodic protection. So we won't have the issues over there unless some fluke thing happens, like shift of the ground, it may split a pipe. That's very possible, and that has happened in a few places. But this other stuff that's been put in by development, and whatever is available and whatever they can get away with, this is the end of the real reality of what we're going to be facing with.
So the question is, should we have more than 2 on the shelf?
Again, like I mentioned, you don't want to have a lot of stuff on the shelf because there is an aging. If it's not in contact with water, those components, the O-rings and stuff like that will start degrading.
What do we average now in breaks?
Well, we have 2 in the last 2 months. So we had a saddle there in courtyards north, or courtyards, whatever that is, over there by the bank. And we replaced 2 of the saddles there because they were different. If you remember the pictures, it's showing you the ones that we are according to our spec, and the ones at the time were put in that we didn't have spec, like following CSU specs. Whatever they put in, it's what they put in.
So as you have one break, you just replace the one on the shelf? Okay.
Yeah. In a roundabout way, yes. Like steel fittings and stuff like that, we have quite a few. All right. The last thing is, Falcon Highlands has no projects going over there currently. Bent Grass Residential, Bent Grass Commercial, Falcon Marketplace. The Keene Supers has a prefab building, you've probably seen it, as it's appeared here in the last week, and they're gonna be putting block around that. They're starting to put up the canopy. They've had unload the steel components for that, for the canopy frame to go up. They have put in their drainage platform in there for the cement slab that they're gonna put in. So that's gonna be up and done here in probably the next few weeks. They're trying to open up before December, but we'll see what happens.
Who is
there.
King Super?
King Supers, yeah.
The kiosk, the gas station,
No,
or the whole store?
The store itself. The gas station might take a little bit longer, but.
I'll believe it when the dairy trucks show up out there.
Yeah.
This is the rumor. This is the rumor that they're trying to do, but I don't think.
How many years has it been going on?
Yeah.
At least we have a building there now, right?
Yeah.
Since I've lived down here.
I guess if they don't finish it, it'll be a trampoline world or something.
Yeah.
Spirit Halloween. Spirit Halloween.
D49, their water main distribution loop is all completed, as well as their sewer tie-in. So we're pressure testing is, tomorrow they'll be finishing up their last of the pressure testing over there. Water quality. Now, our Baptiste did come out good. However, the 18th and 19th of this month, we had some brown water calls. Again, the Wall Tuesday LB area was the first to be reported. So we went over there and flushed that area. We collected samples, and what we're looking for in the the Tamlin water from Cherokee is the orthophosphates or polyphosphates because of the sequestering agent that we use over there. So we already took those samples, there is presence of it, I got those results today, that we can show, yes, your product is present in our distribution system. Yes, when it degrades, it releases what it couldn't keep 90, and that's what causes our yellow and brown waterfalls. And then since then, we didn't have any. And then there's no fire hydrants currently out of service, but we are continuing with the fire hydrant maintenance and the directional flushing of the lines. So is there any questions, any further with the water report?
I think he gave us 20.
Okay. Well, see, this is just notes to me. I can elaborate on it. Now, Wally's, I'm just gonna do what he has written because I don't know what he has going on over there. And that's his wheelhouse, but I'll present his report if you're ready.
We are ready.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute, Troy, say it.
What, item 14, wastewater report?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of you there.
But now we're waiting for you to say what's next.
All right, this is Wally's report.
We gotta change up our stick here.
See if I can do this in a minute. All right, September DMR is completed. The electricians are working on new power from the old lab building to the headworks to lay the electric for the headworks heater unit. A new blower company came and diagnosed problems on blower 2 and has ordered much needed parts for the maintenance and repairs that previous company did not follow through on. Really pleased with the new vendor. Continue working with D.R. Horton, their engineer, and their district engineer in the design of Grandview lift station. WHMD is hosting a meeting with Respect, Grandview Reserve, and D.R. Horton, and affected landowners regarding the easements for the Grandview gravity line crossing 24 and continuing down to Stubb Road of Curtis. I'd like to see why you read forward it that way. Okay, whatever. November 6th, due to the depth of the line, the easement will be quite wide, and WHMD and D.R. Horton have agreed to offer a sewer tap to the affected property owners at D.R. Horton's cost. It will be laid out an addendum to the Grandview IGA as an extraterritorial agreement and for the affected property owners only. It should be 10 or less sewer connections committed. SCADA upgrades complete for all 3 lift stations.
Yay!
Received new potable flow meter.
Good.
We'll be measuring several areas of flow in the district for accuracy. One of them we already know what they're going to do. Sent notice to Denali Water that they are terminating our sludge hauling contract effective December 31st of 23. And then working with WBA and Genesis for the new sludge hauling contract will likely be signed by the end of the month when I return from vacation, as it should be ready to go. Several employees are attending wastewater and collection classes, working on 24 budget. Got official documentation that Grandview Reserves IGA with Cherokee has been terminated, which officially puts the Grandview IGA into effect, and review plans for U-Haul, Falcon Storage, 4 businesses development on Owl Place and Dunkin' Donuts.
Good job, JD, thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
I'm sure you have no questions for wastewater, because I would not be answering them.
All right, thank you. All right, item 15, items unfinished from previous meeting.
Is that what we want to talk about that?
That works. Yeah, I think it's fine.
So JD has been approached by International Development Company about a inclusion of a piece of property. It's the property, yes, you have it right there. It's adjacent to where 7-Eleven is, so that property right there that's currently vacant. So we have found records that the petition was heard and approved by the board, but we have not found any records that the board actually approved or held a public hearing on an inclusion.
We did not.
So what you have in front of you is all the documentation that we got from the developer.
That is, what's his name, right?
Randy.
It's Randy
Randy
Case, and then this other gentleman that.
Well, he came to us
So there's
with
two
this
different properties
plan,
there.
and then changed it to this plan, and then changed it to another plan.
So there are some discrepancies that I found, and John and I were talking about it. So the letter that you have in front of you is the very first page. That's from Mr. Case. Talks about this is only gonna be a commercial development property, but then in the actual inclusion agreement, it says that it's residential.
Yes.
Correct.
So there
High
is
density residential.
some
Yeah.
inconsistencies with what they have said. So upon advice of council, what we are gonna recommend to developers that they redo their petition for inclusion, as well as a new updated inclusion agreement and service agreement.
So we sent this back. At this meeting, when this was presented, we agreed to hear that we accepted the petition for inclusion. There were several other petitions for inclusion at the same time. Same time Circle K, when we had to send Circle K's back because the definitions on the addendum pages or the exhibit pages weren't accurate. This one did not have the appropriate exhibits with it to start with, and it came in as commercial property holdings on that corner. And adjacent to it was another property that was separated in inclusion. That one was accepted, this one was sent back to be revisited when they provided more documentation. The documentation we got back is that they had submitted to the county to change it from commercial to residential. That residential was putting, I believe, 64 units in an 8-acre spot, which does not meet the standard that has been set forth out here in Falcon. Now, we can't stop development, but when we're talking about tap fees and the rendering of service to those units, we have held strong on our specs that we will do like the townhome, like we went minimized down to townhomes, but not apartment style. And this that he submitted to the county was, I believe, 4 units per building there. And this was when we said we need them to go to CSU and get specs on high-density housing so that we can act accordingly to what the surrounding area requires as far as specs for those, and SFEs required for high-density housing of that nature. It was sent back, they never came back to us with anything. So when this goes back to Mr. Case and his investors, that was our response then. And the only thing I could find was what I'd sent you. And then and I asked you, I said, this is a Randy Case property, and you said, no, that's the other one. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure this is a Randy Case property we had problems with. It's not a problem with the developer or Randy Case himself, it's a problem with the plan.
Right.
Squeezing 64 units and the SFEs required for that in an 8-acre spot in an area where you have, other than the townhomes, and then you have the, over here on the corner of Stapleton and Meridian, I forget what they're calling that subdivision that is having all the issues with paintbrush. The new one that they're proposing will be also townhome type structures over there. So there's no large high density like you see on Woodman where you have apartments and then you have four space, which would require 4 SFEs per one of those units, correct? So you're talking about a pretty massive amount of SFEs required for a very small area. For what, just to the north of that, is 2.5 to 3 acre lots. So that, so then you have 3 houses per 8 acres, and now you're saying you want to put 64 in that same 8 acre spot in an area that's not developed that way, which does not meet what the community standard is out here.
They gonna have water for that?
They're not gonna have enough water on that property. They would have to pay some significant WAFs.
It doesn't
Now,
match.
do we have to let them pay WAFs?
So the developer certainly needs to be allowed to submit a petition, but it'll be at the board's discretion whether to approve it.
Okay, okay.
Are we pointing out something, so with the high density, because there was one next to the bent grass the Houchins property.
Yes.
That they wanted to put in 115 units, but it was 115 units doubled. So it's about 330 units. And we told them simply that we just didn't have the capacity for the sewer line. Because normally that this would have been on, what would, the highest density that you can have is right in deck grass is so many acres, or so many square feet for a building to accommodate one SFE for each building. So because they would have to go and significantly put a lot of cost in the infrastructure to upgrade it, they would have to start from where it ties into the lift station there on McLaughlin with Meridian and start from there and upsize that line all the way up there to accommodate the heavy, high density homes / apartments.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's,
Yeah, needless to say, there's inconsistencies in the paperwork, and obviously there's more to the story.
that's why it
So
was sent back.
We were going to advise them to resubmit and give us all the correct information on this project, because, you know, we're talking about 64 homes, but in here it says no more than 25.
I also have a feeling
There's
that
a ton of inconsistencies.
this was probably a major problem in this getting sent back
Yeah,
where it
so-
needed to go.
Yeah, so, you know, the petition for inclusion still stands, but, you know, in terms of actually approving the inclusion, you know, that's gonna be based off of updated paperwork from the developer, and then if the board sees fit to include.
It needs to be accurate.
Correct.
We can't make a educated educated decision on stuff that's not accurate, and we don't have everything provided to us. And that's why it was sent back, not because of high density. Now, the high density that they proposed on this go-round does not meet any of what we have out here. It just does not meet what the community, I guess, expectations are out here. Not that we don't need, you know, townhomes and stuff. I mean, our youth can't afford these housing costs out here, but nonetheless, once they have everything provided, we did approve the petition for inclusion, that we would hear it, but once we get all the documentation where we can actually have a hearing on it and have a discussion about all the facts in the inclusion, we have the obligation to protect the district and the community here. So, it's kind of where we're at. I would say look at the name on the front of the letter, and that probably tells you where that buck stopped on its way back.
Exactly.
Did I cover all that, guys?
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened.
It took me a minute to really grasp it when you asked me about it, and then as I started going through old paperwork, I was like, oh, now I exactly remember what we did here. And
You
that
could
was,
have just asked.
huh?
You could have just asked.
What?
I'd have told you. Sorry, Greg.
All right,
What's next?
board follow-up on older items. I guess the oldest item we have on there, right? All right, then with that being said, I'll move or motion that we enter executive session for determining positions relative to personnel matters pursuant to CRS 246402-4FI, assuming not namely enterprise director compensation, and for matters that may be subject to negotiations pursuant to 246402-4E, namely the Cherokee Metro District Water Agreement, and for the purposes of receiving legal advice pursuant to CRS 246402-4B, namely the 2024 district rates and fees. We do need to add in there, you were needed, unless you want to do it in other business, the
Water report?
the land, the information you had on the land, Buford land.
Oh, yeah,
For the
we can
board.
add that to executive session. So it would be property purchase.
Land purchase. And that would be under negotiations under pursuant to CRS 24640224E, because we did make an offer on that.
Second.
Second by John. Any other discussion on it? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, I forgot. Hi, Sherry. I forgot you were on there.
I am.
All right, we'll enter executive session in 5 minutes. Session. Okay, we need a motion to add. All right, I do need to make a motion that we add land purchase negotiations under CRS 24640224E to the agenda under executive session, as it had to be discussed in there. It was left off the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah. And any other
Oh,
discussion?
second.
A second? Yeah, I motioned. You second, John second.
Any conflicts to disclose?
No.
All right, any other discussion on it? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Did that. I dropped my pen. And then in other business, we need to add Cherokee Metro District Water Agreement. And I will make a motion that we begin litigation against Cherokee Metro District in reference to our water agreement, IGA, that they are in breach of.
Second.
And a second by Sherry. Any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Motion carries. And we will have him here next meeting.
David?
All right. And so then I will entertain a motion for adjournment if there's nothing else under other business.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
No. I actually just wanted to take a minute and thank the residents for being patient with us as we changed from a very outdated broken system to a new system. There were a lot of bumps and bruises last week. The main office felt them, and we just want to thank the people in the main office for fielding those calls, as well as thanking the residents for being patient with us. And credit card machines will be back up, we're told, next week, communicating with our new system instead of going into the abyss of our old system that we are not a part of anymore. So, thank you.
No, can I make a motion,
Well
we
done.
adjourn?
Now you can make a motion.
Good thing you caught that. Go ahead.
Second.
Second.
All right, motion by John, and second by Stacy for adjournment. Any other discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion
Good night,
carries.
Sherry.
Good night, Sherry.
Night, guys.
Go be
Bye,
well back.
Sherry.
Oh.